This is PTV World. I am SHABAHAT and you're watching Fault Lines. Pakistan's political situation is quite happening these days. Not only the government of coalition parties is under immense pressure because of the economic situation, but also there is an opposition calling for elections. In two major provinces of the country, the provincial assemblies have been dissolved. Amid all of this, there is a lot of hue and cry for fresh elections. Election perhaps in two provinces, or maybe Pakistan is moving toward a general election. This is yet to be decided, but Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz is preparing for an election campaign. And at this very important juncture, return of Maryam Nawaz Sharif today has become a major headline for Pakistan's political landscape. Maryam Nawaz has returned to Pakistan to give a fresh breather of air to the narrative of PMLN that is preparing to prepare the mind of the people for upcoming election. To talk about this, I'm joined by Mr. SHAHRUKH, who is a senior analyst and joining me over the phone. SHAHRUKh Saab, welcome to the show. SHAHRUKH Saab, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shabazz Saab.
SHAHRUKH Saab, the return of Maryam Nawaz Sharif today to Pakistan, what does essentially it mean for PMLN?
Right. So far, from the development that we are seeing, this seems to be a major milestone. Last time she was conversing for the party, the political landscape of the country was quite different, Shabazz. At that time, Imran Khan Sahab had presented his narrative of foreign conspiracy, which eventually fell through, and he has actually backtracked from it as well. And also, there seemed to be a steady stream of support behind him. But this time now, it feels that he has gradually started losing steam. In Karachi also, we saw that his party could not even muster a second position. It fell on the distant third. In Punjab also, there seems to be the need that the PMLN comes forward with a coherent national narrative. And this is exactly what is going to happen. We have seen how she was welcomed. I think that she still has the thrall, the kind of impact on the masses. So the party will definitely benefit from her return.
And the economic situation of the country, given the impact of the conditions that IMF has asked us for, isn't it going to make the situation more difficult for the ruling party? And perhaps this might be one of the major challenges that the party is facing.
Shabbat, I wish we used to conduct, we would conduct the kind of opinion polls that were needed, that we are accustomed to in other, democracies around the world. Because that doesn't happen. We don't have the kind of reaction from the masses regarding various aspects of economy. I keep on hearing television pundits talking about poverty, those people who have never actually seen poverty, right? So my concern is that people of Pakistan are really committed to the idea of national recovery. And because of the media, there is enough awareness regarding how the economy is and how it can be improved. So at this moment, I don't see any agitation on the street. I don't see the kind of political turmoil that we were told could happen. So at this moment, it is very difficult to say that the economic reality on ground is going to impact one political party negatively. Of course, there is, the dire conditions are there, and the common man on the street might be feeling the heat. But despite that, I can assure you that in the past also, we have seen similar economic seesaw, right? But the circumstances change very quickly. One example, Shabat, is of PTI's own abysmal economic performance. Before it was put out of power, before it was removed out of power, everybody was complaining about its economic performance. But within no time, we saw that they managed to actually convert the whole narrative into this conspiracy theory, and they managed to garner the kind of support that they needed after coming out of power, right? So in Pakistan, the political narrative usually has more sway. So if Maryam Nawaz can have the kind of impact, the kind of messaging that is needed, I think the common man on the street will go with the narrative.
And as the country is inching closer toward an election, if not a general election, then at least an election in two of the major provinces of the country, don't you believe PMLN must also be considering to reshape their general narrative about these elections? Perhaps this might be one of the major things on her cards as she starts her electoral campaign or political campaign this point onwards.
Right. Look, one thing is clear. The people of Punjab, and because we are talking at this moment about Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has very different dynamics, right? But in Punjab, if you look at how politics continues, one thing I can tell you, the people of Punjab don't appreciate an early election that is imposed on them. A government that actually dismisses their mandate, throws it away, and calls for the election. That is precisely what PTI did. So at this moment, I think that a political party that had an incredible advantage and which actually dismantled it based on whims, okay, will not get a lot of reward or a lot of appreciation. And therefore, we have seen that the situation is vitiating for PTI. Recently, there was a rumor that Imran Khan might be arrested. And we saw that there was no groundswell of support. There was no agitation on the street. Television anchors were, gathering support for Imran Khan at that time, right? So from that, I would surmise that, stage is set. And if PMLN can work on the proper narrative, that is one, putting economic realities in context, and then building on Nawaz Sharif's, appeal to the masses, because somehow his appeal has never diminished. I remember General Musharraf's time when it was thought that PMLN will be swept out of this, province.
Farooq Saab, thank you so much for being guest in our program. Your point is well taken, and nonetheless, this return of Maryam Nawaz Sharif is going to have a tremendous impact on the political landscape of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, moving towards the second topic of our show is the rising tide of militancy in the country. Now, recently, for last 1 year, there has been a great increase in the number of attacks on Pakistan's armed forces as well as the innocent civilians in the country by the militant outfits, which are operating under various brand names. Nonetheless, their agenda, their motto is the same, and that is to damage Pakistan and Pakistan's people as much as possible. We have seen a clear rise in attack not only by Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, but the operations of Baloch Liberation Army, a militant outfit that is working against the stakes of the country, have also increased phenomenally. And this means the attack on not only military but also the paramilitary forces in the country. Why all of this is happening at this very moment? What can be the implications for the country? What are the new dimensions of this existential threat that we are facing? Team Fault Lines have prepared a package. Watch the package before I bring my first guest to this part of my program.
Pakistan marked a tumultuous end of the year 2022, which saw at least 150 attacks by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan across the country, killing dozens of people. In November, the outlawed terror group Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan unilaterally ended an Afghan Taliban brokered ceasefire agreement with the government and ordered its fighters to launch more attacks. The law and order situation in the country deteriorated with terrorist groups like the outlawed Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the Islamic State Group, and Gul Bahadur Group executing deadly attacks. Insurgents in Balochistan have also stepped up their violent activities and formalized a nexus with the TTP. The incident at the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Police's Counter-Terrorism Department Interrogation Center in Bannu and the botched suicide bombing attempt in Islamabad left several countries worried about the security of their nationals. As the country battles a fresh wave of insurgency, which has left many soldiers martyred and several others injured, the Pakistan Army's top brass resolved to uproot terrorism without any distinction. Pakistan's top security body, the National Security Committee, announced its resolve to have zero tolerance for terrorism in the country and reaffirmed its determination to take on any and all entities that resort to violence. The United States has also thrown its weight behind the counter-terrorism decisions taken by the National Security Committee in its recent meeting, saying Pakistan has a right to defend itself against terrorism. Pakistan's security forces are determined to eliminate the menace of terrorism, and heroic sacrifices of the brave soldiers have further strengthened resolve of the nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, to talk about this very important problem that we are facing, I have this time invited in my studio a guest that I've been requesting to be in my studio, Syed Khalid Muhammad. He is Director General of a think tank called Command 11 and has joined me various times over the phone, but for the first time is my guest in the studio. Welcome to my studio, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
We are facing this problem of militancy, and all of this has started unfolding after Taliban's takeover. Situation was not as bad when Taliban were not in complete control of power. Are these two things that are directly interrelated to each other?
Definitely. They are definitely interrelated. If you notice, when the Taliban was taking power in Afghanistan, Pakistan very clearly gave the Taliban one message saying that your soil will not be used against Pakistan. You will work with us against all the militant organizations that make Pakistan a target. The mistake that happened is that when the Taliban lost its financial support from foreign countries, sanctions were placed, the only route they had was to support these various groups to find some sort of, and as a Pakistani created term, strategic depth to work with Pakistan. We have seen numerous occasions where the Taliban as a whole is against militancy, but certain groups that are operating within the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, they have long contained this war, coming across the border, fighting in Fatah, then going back across and taking safe haven. After Zarb-e-Azab was completed, we saw that the TTP attacks completely came to an end against civilian Pakistanis. Now, all of a sudden, the TTP has announced that we are going to go after civilian Pakistanis again. If that starts to happen, it's Afghanistan that needs to stop them on their side of the border. We cannot stop them from here.
You said it all started as an outcome of the financial problem that Afghanistan is facing. But that actually gives birth to another very significant question. After remaining in Afghanistan for over 20 years, not only the United States has abandoned Afghanistan militarily, but they have also abandoned Afghanistan financially. Yeah. Didn't United States know the cost of completely depriving a country even of its own wealth while walking out?
Well, here's where we're very surprised with what the Americans did. When Trump was in power, he kept saying over and over, when we start to pull out of Afghanistan, it will be done stage by stage by stage. What ended up happening was that the US military one day said, that's it, we're leaving. And planes were loaded up and people moved out, and all of a sudden Afghanistan went into a state of war. Did the US understand this was going to happen? Definitely they understood it was going to happen. Were they a driving cause in this happening? Yes, they were also a driving cause. Can the US bring stability back to Afghanistan so that Afghanistan can stop supporting terrorist organizations, can start working with its neighbors more effectively? Yes, they can. But the US needs to make a decision that it can't always be the US as the savior. Sometimes it will be Iran, sometimes it'll be Russia, sometimes it'll be Pakistan, sometimes it'll be Saudi Arabia. The US can always not put on the hero hat and say we're the ones that are going to solve the problems. Because over 20 years in Afghanistan, we have seen the problems go from very small to massive problems. And now Afghanistan cannot feed itself, it cannot clothe itself, it cannot heat itself. Afghanistan has gone into a state.
148 died because of the harsh winters
Yeah.
and intense.
Yeah.
But Brother Khalid, there is a very important other side of the story as well, and that's a conspiracy theory, what the Westerns call conspiracy theory. And they say that Afghanistan has been deliberately left to starve, to face all these harshness of weathers and times, because it was never intended to leave Afghanistan stabilized. It has left to be a cane of worms for all neighboring states, so that the problem keep appearing for all these states, including Pakistan, for Central Asia and for many other. What's your take on it?
I would agree, because you can see that with two nations in this region, one with Afghanistan, one with Pakistan. Both have extreme geostrategic significance, both have massive stores of raw materials, both have been kept purposely politically, financially, and militarily unstable. Neighbors have been forced to come up against each other for no reason at all. India-Pakistan is the only battle that we really see because it's over Kashmir. But as far as our fight with Afghanistan, that's not a real fight with Afghanistan. It's a manufactured fight. For the 30, 40 years that Afghani refugees have lived inside of Pakistan, we've all lived together in peace. We've never had issues with each other. But now, all of a sudden, excuse me, two separate countries cannot get along with each other. When they're living together in the same country, they have no issue with each other. But when you made Afghanistan and Pakistan live separately, now Pakistan is fighting Afghanistan's issues, Afghanistan is fighting inside of Pakistan, and there's no stability from either side. Now, part of this is because the Taliban is not one Taliban anymore. In the past, we saw one Taliban organization. Now you are seeing at least 4 different organizations operating. And with those 4 organizations operating inside of Afghanistan, you don't have a semblance in strategy, a semblance in movement, or a semblance in activity.
But here I have another question for you. While we had people likes of Ashraf Ghani, likes of Hamid Karzai, installed regimes that many call even puppet governments, there was a very strong anti-Pakistan rhetoric coming out of Afghanistan. But it gives me an utter surprise when Taliban's leadership is using almost, if not same kind of languages, but have same kind of sentiments. Why is it so? Is it a failure of a diplomatic policy, or is it because of some other reasons that we have not been able to address?
Well, you have to understand a couple of things. Inside of Afghanistan right now, when we talk about the original Taliban that existed inside of Afghanistan, that was one group. Today you have the TTP living inside of Afghanistan, you have Lashkar-e-Jhangvi living inside of Afghanistan, you have Baloch Liberation Army living inside of Afghanistan. It's what we call the alphabet soup of the militant organizations. They're all there. Now, what you have is the Taliban trying to carry their thought process forward, and all of a sudden from this side, ISKP will come and say, no, 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 we will not allow this in this province. So the mentality stops. What we're seeing right now in the heavy anti-Pakistan rhetoric is coming from those organizations. ISKP, TTP, BLA, these are your organizations.
But ISKP is a rival group for the Afghan Taliban. They are not one group. So
I don't call them a rival group. I call them a counter force. They were created to fight the Taliban. They were not created to be an association or a help or a combining force. They were created by Western intelligence with the intent that if the Taliban were to find stability in Afghanistan, ISKP will be used to break their legs. So they are not able to bring Afghanistan to a stable point of view, so that all of the foreign influence will have to pull out.
There is one major shift that we have seen since 2003-04, when this saga had started, to this day and time that we are facing. Back then, in 2001, 2, 3, 4, the militant organizations, be it Afghan Taliban, be it Tehreek-e-Taliban, had a lot of ground popularity. People were very excited about them, but now, at least to our knowledge, none of these organizations is popular on ground, and yet the venom of the snake hasn't been less. What can be the reason for them not to lose their power, not to lose their tide, because despite the fact that they're not equally popular?
First off, the target has not changed. I mean, the target that they initially identified was the military of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan. That target has not changed for any of the militant organizations. What we've seen is every time a militant organization has engaged in talks with the government of Pakistan, we see 3 splinter groups form. And those 3 splinter groups draw from that main group. They draw from another group that is disgruntled with the government of Pakistan, so they also join in. So what you see is instead of having one TTP, you have a TTP along with 25 different flavors of TTP. And those 25 flavors are the ones carrying out brutal attacks. Those 25 flavors are the ones kidnapping people. Those 25 flavors are the ones saying, we will not negotiate with the government of Pakistan. If you remember, Maulana Baradar was released by the government of Pakistan. He has taken the lead role in negotiation. The fight now is between Maulana Baradar and the Taliban. And even though Hekmatyar was a close ally of Pakistan, he's also taken a harsh stance against Pakistan now. So a lot of close allies of Pakistan have now moved aside and said, you know, there's an opportunity here for Afghanistan to stand up without Pakistan. And if we can stand up without Pakistan, then possibly we can take Pakistan, which was Afghanistan's intent from the very beginning.
Khalid, another important thing that actually surprises many of us is the rise of attacks by BLA. Now, BLA is never been a partner or a part of a parcel with TTP or the Afghan Taliban. They had a very different agenda, but their ability to hit Pakistan's military, their propaganda campaigns on YouTube, on all social media outlets have increased, phenomenally increasing the problems for our paramilitary forces. What can essentially be the reason behind that?
Well, 2 things you have to remember. BLA's initial goal was the separation of Balochistan from Pakistan. Their intent has not changed. The advantage that BLA has gained is because many numerous international powers want to create instability within Pakistan. BLA is now receiving funding and intelligence information from foreign powers. Their targeting is now significantly better than what it was in the past. Before, BLA would have to work from a network where someone saw something, someone knew something. Now they're getting satellite information. Now they're getting intelligence officers giving them movements, understanding where someone's going to be, when they're going to be there, when the best time to hit is going to be. They have now turned BLA into a proxy war. So you have, and again, for example, you have Ross sitting on top, TTP attacks KP, BLA attacks Balochistan. Inside of Sindh, you've created your own issues. And in Punjab, you have Lashkari Jangvi, Lashkari Taiba, Sepah Saba, which are creating more unrest there. The intent is to create so much unrest inside of Pakistan that there is no other option other than invasion.
Now, how has been our response so far to all of this problem? Because as we had discussed earlier as well, the nature of strategies or the nature of the challenges have changed dramatically with all these organizations using these modern techniques and strategies that we have listed in our previous conversation. How do you evaluate the response of state of Pakistan and particularly Pakistan's military with regards to countering these challenges?
We have to look at this from 3 points of view. There is a military solution, there is an economic solution, there is a social solution, and there is a mental solution. Now, militarily, the government of Pakistan has done everything it possibly can to push the terrorists across the border. We can only do that much as a military, is beat the terrorists. Keeping them from coming back across the border means you have to give them economic incentives, you have to give them jobs, you have to give them entrepreneurship opportunities so that they have something other to do than to build bombs. Secondly, you have to wipe out the mindset that allows people to believe that the answer to violence is violence. That I have to protect Islam with my life. Yes, we have all sworn as Muslims that we will give our lives if someone insults the Prophet. But declaring jihad just because you don't agree with an ideology is not the way to solve the problem. It is a way to increase, it's basically throwing petrol onto an already burning fire. And what we've seen up until 2013, the fire started to die down, the fire started to die down, the fire started to die down. Then people started throwing petrol. First in KP, then in Balochistan, then in Karachi, then back in KP. Then they threw petrol into Afghanistan. And that fire rolled across back into Pakistan again. And that's what we're dealing with now.
So the military operation, you believe, is not the only solution to
Of
address
course
this
not.
problem?
Look, there is no such thing as a military solution to a terrorist problem. Terrorism creates itself because someone believes that they are being denied their rights. Now, if I believe that a bullet is going to solve that problem, then I'm going to create another 100 terrorists. I'm going to create another 1,000 terrorists. But if I believe that instead of using that bullet, I create a factory, for example, and the 500 people that I would have killed in an operation, I take them and I put them to work in a factory. I've changed their thinking, I've changed their opportunity, I've changed their way of living. Right now, we have not found a way to change the way they live, and that's why this problem continues to grow and get out of control for us.
Thank you very much, Brother Khalid, for being guest in our program. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll join you back with the last segment of program. Stay with us. Welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan's biggest problem these days is Pakistan's economic situation. It has reached a point where it is not any secret that the country is direly struggling against its decreasing financial reserves and the commitments that it has to fulfill, the commitments of finances going abroad. I mean, the payments of our debts as well as the imports that the country is making. In all of this hue and cry, Prime Minister has recently given a remarkable statement wherein he has said that the conditions in negotiation with IMF would be agreed, and soon Pakistan is going to take a major leap in the negotiations that were pending towards the 9th review of IMF program. But this has come to us at a cost of serious devaluation and inflation that has not been witnessed before, which has not only increased the challenges for the poor citizenry of the country, but has also had political implications for the government that the government is very seriously facing at a time when elections are not very far, at least in the two provinces of the country. How the government is looking towards the problem and how exactly IMF's program is going to affect Pakistan's political and economic situation. I have requested Dr. Anil Salman to be guest in my program. He's a renowned economist and is joining me in my studio. Dr. Anil, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much.
We're talking about this problem that Pakistan is facing, the economic crisis that has unfolded on this country. And most of the time in many talk shows, when we are listening to the conversations, IMF comes as perhaps something that is going to solve everything for Pakistan if Pakistan agrees to the conditions. Do you agree with that, that IMF's program is actually the silver bullet that is going to kill all these problems in a go?
The simple answer is no. And I would say that we have put all our eggs in one basket, that IMF is going to help us. And the track record say that we have been going to IMF for the last 23 times. And it's just like a time machine where the same kind of situation keep on arising. We weren't much different when the 8th review was also under consideration. That just happened in August 2022. And the same kind of situation has occurred now. In my previous writings, I have said that whenever the review is coming, the same economic uncertainty is at its peak. And ultimately, it just pushes the government, all the stakeholders, that whatever conditions are going to be placed on table, we are going to fulfill them. Like we earlier said that we are not going to increase the fuel prices, we are not going to increase the energy tariffs, we are not going to make the exchange rate that vulnerable, and we did some interventions about regarding it. But by the time the IMF has agreed, we have said that okay, we are going to change everything. So I think it's more of our internal vulnerability, internal uncertainty, that we then look into other stakeholders, in which IMF is one of the prime one. I will also add on that you have to look at it that when we are talking about that Pakistan is going towards default risk, what is the composition of this debt? Like 60% of this debt is attributed towards China and Saudi Arabia, like they are giving it. Then 20% is IMF and 20% is other bilateral and trilateral donors. So when you have this kind of composition, so why not focus on China and Saudi Arabia? And why?
But Dr. Anil, the problem is that all of these countries want us to go back to IMF program to ascertain that they're going to get a return on their loans eventually.
Yes, they will. But the question at the moment, I think in every policy corridor, in every talk show, that have we defaulted? Are we going to be defaulted or not? And there are economists who are of this view that we have already, technically we have already defaulted. But I think, in my personal opinion, that the probability of defaulting is very low at the moment, because we are assessing the default from the economic lens, but there's a political lens also. And when you look at the political lens, you see that we have CPEC, a flagship program. And do you think China would ever want to have a country defaulted and let their flagship program to be tagged in a negative manner? It won't. So therefore, and in the last 70 years, there have been situations when we are at the tipping point, and you may have seen that Pakistan is going to default, but we haven't. But yes, this time things are a little bit different.
The problem that we want to discuss in today's program is the conditions that IMF has extended to us. Now, this rope that is going to pull us out of the cave that we are into has a lot of risks associated with it. Like you said, the fuel prices. Now, if fuel prices are going to jump, like petrol, for instance, I was reading in a news article that I shared with you, is going to jump from 230 something to 310 or 15.
Yeah.
Now, will it just not blow the economy that is already so stressed up, particularly when we are talking about the people that are living already below the line of poverty?
I agree. But is it happening only in Pakistan? Globally, we have this inflationary process. And I'll give you two scenarios. Number one is having a high price product, and number two is having a product at least no availability of that. There's a shortage of it. What would you prefer? We still would like
I would
to
have expensive product.
You
that
can
is
have.
available.
And again, these prices are by the market prices, and as the demand and supply fluctuates, the prices are going to fluctuate. But I see that the inflationary pressure is going to be there. The fuel prices are going to increase.
Sir, I'm talking about 50 rupees levy and 17% GST on petrol. I'm not talking about providing it on market price or subsidy. We are gone with that conversation.
Yes, we are gone. But again, like, if do you have any other option towards it? We don't. And the IMF conditionality is that you have to increase the fuel prices, like this.
And what good will it do to us?
You see that it actually brings a fiscal discipline into it. You see the taxation. I'll just give you one number, that in the year 2022, if you look at the tax to GDP ratio, it's 10.2%. If you move back 10 years back, like I'm talking about 2012, still it is 10.2%. So you see that your tax to GDP ratio has not changed, even if your economic activity is happening. Number two, that we are talking about, let's do the economic restructuring. Like, economic restructuring cannot be happening in a span of 3 to 4 months, like what the government has, that kind of time. But what kind of short-term or the immediate actions need to be taken, that needs to be considered.
Dr. Anil, we are going to make the payment to IMF in US dollars, right? We are not going to pay them in Pakistani rupee. That is going to be collected from the petrol levy and GST. The revenue
Right.
is going to come in PKR. In order to improve our income in USD, we need to work on our industry. That is going to export. That is going to bring in exchequer. But if there are no subsidies on energy, there are no subsidies on fuel, if the taxation is going to be increased, this will kill the industry's backbone, making us further vulnerable to or unable to perhaps pay back to IMF. So why not the creditor wants us to consider policies or to take policies that are rather better for our economy, instead of hammering the industry further and making it more difficult for the industry to survive? It's not in the greater good of the creditor itself.
Again, I would say that we still need the structural changes, if I respond to your query into it, that it has nothing to do from the outside pressures. Number one thing, if you look at the contribution of the three sectors, agriculture, industry and your services, that structure has not changed in the last 10 years. Agriculture is still contributing around 20%, industries 30%, and services 50%. No matter how much human capital you have improved, no matter what kind of innovation has happened, but the contribution of these structures have not changed. Number two, that the import, we have become a very strong import dependent country. That thing has to be changed. Number three, that when you are making a transition from agriculture to manufacturing and to services, in Pakistan the special case has happened that we moved from agriculture to services without maturing our manufacturing. And now when we are looking out for these finished commodities, we have to import, which further worsens our balance of trade. And the third and the most important part is that when you look at your GDP, like you have consumption, investment, government expenditures, and your net exports, you will be amazed to hear that Pakistan has 96% of consumption. And if a country has 96% of consumption, how it is being fueled? It is being fueled by the imports. Now your investment, your government expenditure, and your net exports is only 4%. Now this 4%, this is the structural problem, and if you see that how we can improve, how this thing can be changed, you just need to tinker down your consumption, you move towards investment, and you move towards your government expenditure, and automatically your economy is going to be sustainable.
On this point, State Bank of Pakistan recently, and let me remind you that State Bank of Pakistan has been put out of the clutches of the Ministry of Finance by IMFs.
Yes.
Dictating us these terms and conditions, has recently revised the rate of interest to 17%.
Yes.
Will it not kill the industrial process for good in this country for time to come? I mean, if I am an investor who is going to go to the market and face paramount challenges instead, why not to put my billion rupees in bank and take 17% return instead?
Okay. Now that is from the saving perspective, right? Now you have to also understand that how many people go to bank for the loans? What is the coverage? And in the recent Karandas report, there's hardly like 2 to 3% of the people who are using the banking facilities for the loans.
That's because 96% of the loans are taken by the government.
The household consumption and the government, yes. But the point is that right now, if you ask me as an economist, as an academic economist,
I do.
I would say that the 17%, I was expecting it would go to 18%. So it was a very dovish move on the part of the central bank, because there are three things. Number one indication was, you see that there has been an inflationary pressure in Pakistan, and the projection is that this year and the next year it's going to be 25% on average the inflation is going to be. So in order to curb that inflation, obviously this increase is not sufficient. I was expecting it might go to 18%. So still they made from 16 to 17%. Number two, we need to ensure to IMF that, okay, we are taking steps for the contractionary monetary and fiscal policy. And it was a signal that, okay, State Bank is autonomous. And the third one is that we need to relax certain pressure on the Pak rupee. So there is some inward like incoming of the Pak rupee in terms of the remittances. As you said, that the expats...
So you mean the expatriates will send the money in dollar to Pakistan to have 17% of return in PKR?
Yes.
But the rate of devaluation is then 21 or 25%.
Then
that's going to kill the purpose.
Yes, that the real interest rate is negative. So one of the strategies that I was talking that, okay, if you have 100,000 Pak rupee, right now the dollar conversion is around $325. So why not you work in terms of you earn money in USD and you spend in Pakistan in Pak rupee? That can also be one of the ways. For that, you need to open up the service sector. We have a pronounced like evidence that the service sectors can also improve the economies as compared to the traditional narratives that manufacturing and the
India has
agriculture
done that recently. They are exporting $156 billion of software to the world.
Exactly. So you open up the market, freelancing business, the IT business, they do work for the outsource that business, they're doing work, they're working for the outside companies in US, in UK, they earn in the foreign currency and they spend in Pakistan.
Dr. Anil, that's my last question. I'm going to repeat the question that I originally did. So taking rate of interest to 17% is deliberately intended to kill the business process in-house so that the savings come to the bank, so that the government can borrow more and so that we can return our investment or return the loans that we have taken from the creditor.
You see,
is that it?
The loans are in the foreign currency. The money that the money that is expected that with the increase of interest rates, saving is going to be promoted. That is in the domestic currency. I don't think so. That is the case.
So why?
The case is to reduce the inflationary
By
pressure.
slowing down the economy.
By slowing the
By
cooling down. of-
taking the people out of their job who would lose their jobs because of this entire process.
How
The
the-
investments would come back to the banks. People would not take risks. You
But-
understand, the fuel is going high, electricity is going high, industrial process is already in shambles. And you're going to put money in the banks, you're going
But
to lose jobs.
You see that just by increasing the interest rates, the process is not going to be that fast the way you are talking about the doomsday. This is what
I'm
I'm
asking
saying.
you.
Yeah, so it's not going to be that worse.
All right.
And I think in the future, believe me, the interest rate is going to be reaching at 18 to or 19%.
With that, we'll end the show here. Dr. Anil, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being guest in our program. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan's economic crisis are continuing and the government is making best of her efforts to pull the country out of these crises, not because of the fact that our economy is struggling, but also because of the fact that every democratic government would want the people of the country or the citizenry of the country to be happy and to be prosperous. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.